French Revolution was the best thing for France from 1789 to 1799. In the French Revolution, they explored representative democracy. The French needed to change some major aspects about their country in order for it to be pulled out of its downward spiral. The people of France encountered the difficulty of self-rule and the chaos that was unleashed from having no ruler. They exchanged centuries' worth of oppression for liberty, equality, and fraternity. We believe that the French Revolution constitutes an important step towards liberty, fraternity, equality, and justice among the French society. One must have liberty in order to pursue justice.
Incompetence of the monarchy. There was a lack of liberty in the French monarchy. Their government had grown to be corrupt, biased, unequal, and incompetent. Monarchy is the one system of government where power is exercised for the good of all. If this is true, then why wasn't power exercised for the good of all of France? Clearly, the government Aristotle spoke of was not the same government in France.
Economic problems leading to the revolution. 1. Political conflict between the monarchy and the reform of the tax system, which led to paralysis and bankruptcy within the country. 2. Big impulse for reform from the people. The people of France wanted fair tax laws. 3. Economic hardship between 1788 and 1799 that leads to popular discontent and disorders caused by
The Three Estates. The aristocracy. The rule of the king was absolute, and the power lay with Louis and his ministers. About 5% of the population is nobility. Jealous of the ministers, they did what they could to regain the power, so they clung to what privileges they had left, particularly the right for high office in the army, the church, and diplomatic service. They did this hoping for absolutism from the king. In turn, because of their privileges, they were very unpopular, specifically 2 privileges that allowed them to claim exemption from several taxes and their control of manorial courts. They spent all of their money on the Palace of Versailles, which would cost about $2 billion in modern-day times. They began to run out of money at about 1789.
Clergy. Another unpopular yet powerful group was the clergy or the church. Many churchmen were far from wealthy, but as an institution it had 1/10 of the land in France, and the higher churchmen were extremely wealthy. This fact and some increasing secular attitude, particularly from the better educated members of general society. This led to anti-clericalism.
The commoners. The commoners include the bourgeoisie and urban middle class. The commoners made up about 95% of the population in France. Many of these people were well off more often than their counterparts in the aristocracy, but they were barred from the privileges and wanted the same right, whether they were social or financial. In rural areas, some peasants owned some of the land, but it was not enough to make a living, so they did paid work while also working in their own fields. There were also high taxes along with feudal dues they had to pay to landlords. In the city, workers were fared a little bit better, but even in the city, though industry was expanding, wages were not keeping up with the cost of living. Industrial unrest was not uncommon.
Tennis Court Oath. 20th of June, 1789. On this day, the Third Estate declared itself the National Assembly and took oath to force a new constitution on the king. The king legalized the National Assembly under the Third Estate, but then the king surrounded Versailles with troops and dismissed Jacques Necker, a popular minister of finances, and supported reforms.
The Battle of the Bastille, July 14th, 1789. The Bastille was a symbol of the autocratic monarchy of France. For that reason, it was torn down by Parisians, marking the beginning of the French Revolution. It was originally constructed to protect Paris from English attack in 1370, but was later used as a prison in the 1700s. Most prisoners were imprisoned without trial by order of the king. As resentment for the king, due to a variety of reasons, and hunger grew, the Third Estate began rioting throughout Paris and were led by revolutionary leaders.
Reign of Terror. August 10th, 1792. On this day, the National Guard and a mob of Parisians invaded the residence of the royal family. The Swiss guard that were protecting the royal family opened fire on the crowd, deeming the 10th bloodiest day of the revolution. The Reign of Terror took many lives, including political leaders as well as the average citizen. However, before the Reign of Terror, people had no purpose behind their death. They died due to illness and starvation because they couldn't afford to be treated properly by a doctor or buy food for themselves, let alone their families. With the Reign of Terror, they died for a cause that they were passionate about. They and their political leaders died so their families wouldn't have to.
The First Coalition. The First Coalition was to restore the monarchy in France because empires were scared that their people would rebel to have what France had. Those countries were Austria, Prussia, Great Britain, Spain, Sardinia, and the Netherlands. French Directory gave the young Napoleon Bonaparte the job to conduct military operations against Austria's forces in northern Italy. By 1797, the only country left fighting France was Great Britain.
Opponents of the Revolution. Edmund Burke thought the revolution was unnecessary. The Reign of Terror killed many innocent people and many political leaders. Rousseau thought the people should make laws directly in order to prevent the ideal from becoming a large society. The French Revolution gave ideas to the Russian Revolution, which led to communism.
Intellectuals supporting the revolution. Some of those who supported the revolution included Thomas Paine and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Rousseau supported ideas that are believed to have sparked revolution in France, like his views of liberty. Paine believed that the revolution was a great idea, and only had support for it. Paine clearly believed that this assertive effort to overcome long-standing local prejudices and attachments and rationally establish a new French national identity from scratch was both wise and encouraging.
Human rights. People without human rights before the revolution. They gained their right to opportunity, their right to participate, and freedom from oppression. Liberty, equality, fraternity. The ideals of the French Revolution lived on in the Declaration of the Rights of Man that the National Assembly adopted in 1789. Its first and guiding principle, that all people are born free and equal in rights, was inspiring to those who had survived the reigns of absolutist monarchs to look forward to a fairer society. And the principle has retained its relevance until the present day, as all know who struggle for the equal rights of everyone, irrespective of their race, sex, or beliefs.
A complicated legacy. Napoleon starts running a military dictatorship which ended the revolutionary loop that began with the seizing of the Bastille. France began the revolution with a tyrant monarchy, and Napoleon ended the revolution with a military dictatorship. But in 1823, 2 years after his death, the publication of Napoleon's memoirs sent shockwaves through the French society. He reinterpreted his decisions and refought his battles for all the world to admire. Longing for the glories he presented and moved by his heroic martyrdom, Napoleon was able to stir public opinion against the restored King Louis XVIII from beyond the grave.
Much like the average teenager, France suffered through its very own identity crisis. The French Revolution was very dramatic, and from that, blood was literally shed to settle disputes. But like one's own awkward teen years, France sacrificed what it had to be a better country. The French Revolution allowed room for development and growth within the French society and government. It was complicated, but it was necessary for France to emerge as a stronger and more secure country.